So last week you created your storyboard or your roadmap for your story. That is full of all of the different elements that you want in your story, but you might still have an idea about how to put them in the right order. How do you tell your story in a way that makes sense for the reader, that has a logical, natural flow, and that's also easy for you as the writer? Sure, you're going to write all of these different pieces in that non-linear way that we talked about in the beginning, but your overall story order still needs to make some sense for your reader. There are 4 basic methods for building your story, and yes, you can use bits and pieces of each of them, but I'm going to tell you about them. You need to choose which one is your primary building method for your story, and possibly pick some others that might be secondary methods that work their way in as well. The first is the most common, and that is chronological. Chronological is telling a story in time order. And that time order is just that. It's this happened first, this happened last. You pretty much stick to that time order. You don't usually jump around. At most, you might start in the future, then go back and work your way back to that front point. That's actually something that happens in the book Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. This was a bestseller. It became a movie. Incredible memoir, incredible biography of Louise Zamperini, and if you haven't read it, definitely pick this one up. This is a great example of a chronologically written story. But even though you're thinking about it in that bigger novel format, it even works in children's books. This book, Little Bean, is the chronology of a dad who got sick and then sicker and sicker and sicker all the way up until he was able to get a kidney transplant, and then he gets better and better. So Little Bean, chronological in the same way that Unbroken is chronological. Chronological is just telling your book in a time order. The next most common after chronological is the WH method. For your WH method, you know exactly what it is. It's answering the WH questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how. Your story throughout its existence is going to have in the content answers to each of these WH questions. It's also going to pose the questions that make your readers ask and answer those questions. They're going to say, I wonder why, I wonder who, I wonder what, I wonder how. You're going to build up the question and then provide the answer. Because of that, you can guess one of the most common things for the WH approach is a mystery. This is why I have good old Sir Arthur Conan Doyle here, the Hound of Baskervilles. And that's because Sherlock Holmes, mysteries, these are obviously all built on WH. But it's also really common in fantasy fiction, in sci-fi, anything that's kind of a mission-oriented, anything that creates that curiosity in your readers. Again, here I've got a children's book, a children's chapter book, as well as an adult book. So you can see that WH method doesn't have to be a mystery, even though that's the most common approach for the WH method. The next type of approach that we have is in our thematic books. Thematic books are often in series, so sometimes it's just a trilogy or it's 5 books and they all have a similar theme, but it can also be a single book. Thematic books are when no matter what else changes, there's always this one central theme. So a couple of examples of thematic books. People Are Dying to Be Heard. This is a nonfiction book I wrote with Ben Marins. The theme of this one is all about listening. And so in each part of the book, even though we're talking about how listening applies to different parts of life or different generations or different people or different situations, there is still that central theme of listening and the importance of listening to people. We can also have thematic, I'm trying to include some children's books, thematic children's books. The Max Explorers series from Triumph Books. This is a series of books where each book starts out the same way and each book ends the same way, and in between you have a puppy who's exploring a city. Again, you have this repeating theme in all of the stories that you stick to no matter what. That's a thematic book. And one of the most common thematic series that's out there is C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. The characters in his book actually change from story to story. A couple of them carry over in more than one, but all of a sudden you're reading the third book or the fourth book and you said, oh my goodness, what happened to these characters I fell in love with? They're gone, but the theme of the book is still the same. You still have this central theme of a divine power, a divine creator who built this world for us and that we eventually are supposed to come home to. That is the central theme of Chronicles of Narnia. Even though the characters change, even though all of the story goals change, you constantly come back to that same theme. That is your thematic stories. And the last one is exponential. Exponential is interesting because it's often mixed up with chronological. So exponential books are building toward something. Again, this can happen often in a series where throughout the series you learn more pieces that eventually build towards something. The difference between exponential books and chronological books are flowing, exponential books are building. So the most popular exponential book that I can think of is Harry Potter, the entire series. Throughout the Harry Potter series, wand lore is being built. You learn about wands in the very, very beginning, how wands are specifically given to specific wizards. Then we eventually learn how the wands choose the keepers. We learn about the tie between Harry Potter's wand and Dumbledore's wand. We ultimately learn that Harry Potter's wand and Voldemort's wand can kind of communicate with each other. They cancel each other out because they were made from the same elements. And then if you didn't have all of that build up about wand lore, the finale of the book would not even be able to happen. The entire series hinges on that exponential buildup of wand lore. And if there's still somebody out there in the world who hasn't read the finale, I'm not going to tell you what it is. But exponential buildup, that is an exponential buildup that is very popular, most of you know, but that exponential buildup, once again, can happen in nonfiction and can happen in children's books. Exponential buildup in Bob Brenner's Living Extreme Life. This is a gentleman who lost over 200 pounds in a single year. But in the story, you can see how this is an absolutely impossible thing to not happen because this transformation is exponentially built up toward within the book. You learn about all of the things that led to his eventually making the decision to make a full transformation in his life. Then we have a very short children's book, Make Room for Jake McNair. In this, throughout the story, the parents are getting one piece and then another for this child's bedroom and another and another. First, they're doing the shades in the room and they're doing the crib and they're building the rocking chair. All of these things are exponentially building up to the ultimate conclusion, which is bringing home a new baby. Exponential, again, different from chronological. Chronological is a flow in a timeline. Exponential is a build toward a natural conclusion. So when it comes to your books, you're going to think about these different approaches, your chronological method, your WH method, your thematic method, and your exponential method. And looking at that storyboard that you created, you're going to say, which one of these makes the most sense for my book and for me to tell my story? If you do not have one of these strings tying your book together, it's going to be illogical. It's not going to make sense, and it's not going to have a natural structure and flow for your reader. So you do need to pick one as a primary. That being said, as I stated in the beginning, you don't have to have only one. It's very often that your exponential books also have a theme. It was true in Harry Potter. There was this theme of friendship that made him a different level from Voldemort. Oftentimes your chronological and your WH are married, and you'll find out that those WHs happen within a natural time flow. Any of them could work together. Pick one primary one, and then something else that you might be able to use to adjust it. Then when you look back at your storyboard, you're going to be able to maybe readjust the order so that your storyboard elements, those building blocks that you created, line up in a very logical making sense kind of flow for your reader that's going to really captivate them and keep them from being confused, because that's the last thing you want them to have when they are reading your book in a month.